Knon 89.3 FM in Dallas and Fort Worth, the voice of the people.
Business owners, tell KNON's listeners about your business. You can put your business or event on KNON. KNON currently has space available to run announcements for you. Tell KNON's listeners about your goods, services, nightclub, concert, or event. Help keep the voice of the people on the air while putting your information on the air. KNON's been named the #1 radio station in Dallas by both the Dallas Observer and D Magazine. Put your business with Dallas's #1 station. Call now for more information at 214-828-9500, extension 227, or extension 233. For more information, go to knon.org and click on the Run Spots on KNON page. It's a great way for your business to support community radio while letting more people know about you.
And good afternoon. Thank you for joining us here on Lambda Weekly on this beautiful but chilly first day of spring.
It's exciting.
It's very exciting. I'm Lerone Landis here with Patti Fink. David is off this week. He is in, I know he's
Baltimore.
at Baltimore. I know he's at a convention, so he's in Baltimore. He'll be joining us back next week. We're in the middle of an election season. Of course, everyone knows that unless you've been hiding under a rock. And we want to talk a little bit about that today. Why is Donald Trump doing so good? How is he doing so good? Does Bernie Sanders really have a chance to catch up with not Bill, we'll talk about a slip. Does it have a chance to catch up with Hillary Clinton? And why, I think anyway, why has some of the LGBT issues largely been absent of this season of this election? So we're going to talk about that and much more today. And here to help us join us talk about that is Darlene Ewing. She is a family law attorney. Thank you very much for joining us.
Hey, it's great to be here.
She's not just any family law attorney. Darlene was the chair of the Dallas County Democratic Party for 10 years. And in that 10 years, we went from pretty much solid red to solid blue in Dallas County. So Darlene had was enormously instrumental in leading our party in Dallas County to victory. So Dallas
serious.
County's like that blueberry in the tomato soup kind of
Oh,
thing.
it really is. I mean, Dallas County is great. It's kind of a bellwether for the state.
Yeah.
And it took a lot of hard work by a lot of people, and now we just have to maintain it and spread it.
So she's got serious blue cred.
Oh, yeah.
Totally blue.
I think for years and decades even, people thought, oh, well, it's Travis County. Like, Travis County's so liberal and, that kind of thing because it's Austin.
Right.
But, hey, I think we might be more solid blue than even Travis County. But
I think so now.
We've been an example nationally, and people come and say, how did you do it here? And because people think of Texas. Well, we know what people think of Texas.
We know what people think of Texas. Yes.
Yes.
From outside looking in, it's, pretty grim. But, people are surprised to hear we have the largest LGBT church in the nation here. Like lots of very liberal things here in the city of Dallas. And one of them is our government, city government and county government. So,
And the other is us. We're the only LGBT radio show that we know of that's been on the air consistently for 30 years now?
33 years.
33 years. So right here in Dallas. We're not on AM, we're on FM.
Yeah.
So right here in Dallas. So let's just jump right in. Now Marco Rubio is gone. So it's kind of come down to realistically a two-man race on the GOP side between Donald Trump and Ted Cruz. It's a lot. Like I say, whatever you think about this year's race, it's been entertaining. If anything else, it's been entertaining.
Did you see I was watching MSNBC as the returns were coming in, and they were kind of recapping the evening because, like I said, Hillary Clinton did a 5-state sweep,
Yep.
and Cruz this and Trump that, and on a Kasich one, Ohio, and all of this stuff. And then somebody said, "Oh, and Marco Rubio dropped out." And they're like, "Oh yeah, Marco Rubio dropped out."
I mean, like talk about
that kind of says it all, right there.
Right. I mean, talk about such an afterthought.
All the way.
Exactly.
And he only won one county. one county
Yeah,
in
yeah.
Florida, in his
That's
home
sad.
state. It's
Yeah.
very sad.
And I
Very.
kind of almost felt sorry for him. Yeah.
Almost.
Almost.
But I mean, if you watch him in the debates, you're like, okay, this guy gets a phone call that Russia has sent some missiles to the Ukraine. He would like panic and down a bottle of water and trying to figure out what to do. I mean, that's just the way he was like a deer in headlights, in these
Right.
debates.
Right.
Seems like a nice enough guy, but way not ready for the job.
No.
Yeah, and he wasn't allowed to run for his Senate seat again. He can't
He's
be on
not.
the ballot in 2 places
Right.
in Florida law. So he's done.
He's done. Supposedly, he said after come January, he will be back a private citizen. He has no interest anymore. So
Interesting.
Yeah.
He'll start making money speaking engagements.
Yeah. He will.
Make the rounds.
So of course, nobody really knows the answer to this, but why do you think that why does Donald Trump seem unstoppable?
Because I think, first of all, most of the numbers, with I think the exception of Florida, he hasn't won a state by more than 35, maybe 40%. So the majority of Republicans are not voting for him. They're just splitting their vote among everybody else, and now you're in these winner-take-all states, which I think it's going to be difficult to stop him. And I think the 35 to 40% that are on board, I hear two reasons. Well, he's a businessman, and I think a businessman should be running the government, and I'm telling people the government's not a business, and let's talk about his business, because, the man's filed bankruptcy 4 times. He's ripped off investors. He's cheated banks out of money. I don't know about, and maybe if I inherited $200 million, I might be able to do a little bit with it. But, they're fanatical. You look at those rallies and look at how they attack. They're fanatical. It's like something out of the 30s. Where people are just, I don't know, it's like this massive hysteria. And he didn't create it. He took advantage of the environment the Republicans created, that government is evil and everybody's losing their jobs and it's got to be somebody's fault. It's not me, the white guy's fault. It's got to be the Mexicans' fault. Or, oh, no, it's those Muslims are coming after to kill me. Oh, no, it's the black guy that took my job. Oh, it's, they shipped my job to India. It's always somebody else's fault. And he has captured that mood that the Republicans have been campaigning on for 10 years as to why they should control government, because we're going to destroy the evil government. We're going to cut your taxes. We're going to save you from all these bad things. And he's caught it in a bottle, and these people are fanatical, and he can say or do anything, and it will not change their mind.
And he even said that. This is the guy that said, I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody, and I wouldn't lose a vote.
That's right.
And,
the question is, can he gain votes? He's trumpeting himself. Maybe that's the wrong word. But although,
perfect word.
Trump is the party of Trump. He's not a Republican.
Right.
He's not a Democrat. He's a Trump. And, he's saying, oh, well, I'm bringing millions more into the party. I don't think that he is getting more votes than the other Republicans, but if you take the total of what the other Republicans are getting, what he's getting, he's really not getting the majority of Republican votes.
And it's true, too, I think, that, he's whipped up these people, and he says he's brought them in, but if you look at somebody like Nate Silver, who, has predicted, he's a 538 blog, through the New York Times. He predicted all of the previous elections in the last 10
Spot
years
on.
or so. Spot on, and even Senate races and such. And he says that Trump has maxed out. He's hit his ceiling, and people aren't coming to Trump. That Trump has what he's going to have, even through a general election.
I think so.
And because there are a lot of Republicans who are not going to vote for him.
And you hear these stories that somehow Republican vote is up and Democratic vote is down. Hillary has more votes total than Donald Trump.
Than anybody. Than
any of them. Because she's over 8 million votes. Trump is like 7.5. And then Bernie is around 6 million. And then I think Cruz is somewhere around 6 or 7 million. So Hillary has gotten more votes than Donald Trump, although you wouldn't know it. Because,
Right. But, that leads to the question, who's actually going to turn out come the general election when it's really going to count. Now, it doesn't count now, but this is when it's really going to count. Are Democrats, are Bernie supporters going to turn out for Hillary and vice versa, whoever gets the nomination? And are Ted Cruz and Rubio and going on down the list, are their supporters going to turn out for Trump? Or are they just going to stay home?
That's a great question.
I mean...
Well, I have a good college buddy. We talk occasionally. I talked to her this week. She's a Republican. She works as a Republican election clerk. And she hates Hillary, and which seems to be the presumptive nominee. I said, well, are you going to vote for Donald Trump? She goes, absolutely not. I said, well, what about Ted Cruz? I hate Ted Cruz.
Right.
I voted for Rubio. I said, so what are you going to do in the general? I don't know. I'll probably skip it. And I'll just go down and vote for you. And go home. I said, works for me.
and I've seen that same sentiment
Yes.
on social media. Absolutely.
There are Republicans say they're going to vote for Hillary if it's Donald Trump.
Yes. I work with a few of them. I won't say their names, but I work with a few of them. Yes. But I've seen some specific admissions of particularly Bernie supporters that says that if Hillary gets it, they will not go and vote.
It's the Bernie or bust thing.
Yes, exactly. But you know what? I remember during the first, back in 2008, when it was Obama versus Clinton, you had some of the same chatter, but in the end, they all got together and went and voted for Obama. So I think it might be just bluff right now.
I think they're angry. Some of them are new to the process and think somehow the system was rigged against Bernie. And, when you talk about superdelegates and things.
Which we'll get to.
But at the end of the day, I think, and I saw a poll about a week ago that said 85% of them said they will support the nominee no matter who it is. Because there's too much at stake here. I mean, there will be some who won't. Just like I'm sure there were some Obama supporters, Hillary supporters that didn't vote for Obama at the end of the day. But most of us, we come together. Because we still believe that a Democrat is better than any Republican they can ever come up with, especially with the Supreme Court on the line.
Right.
This is a critical election year, and they see that. And so I really think at the end of the day, we might lose a few, but they'll come around, and we'll pick up some sane Republicans probably.
And I've seen a couple of people on Twitter and elsewhere who are big Bernie supporters, and I think that's great. I love their passion, and, I remember having such passion for Dean when Dean was running.
Oh, yeah.
That kind of like
that was such a fun time.
But we came together. I was a Kerry delegate to the National Convention that year.
Yeah.
So it happens. But I think when they've been posting things like, I will not be, if Bernie doesn't win the nomination, I won't be voting for Hillary because I will not be complicit in installing Trump as our president. And I think so many people get that. They're not going to be part of that. They're going to, because if they don't step out and vote, if they stay home, if they go and vote for Trump for sure, but if they stay home and don't vote for Hillary, that's basically a vote
dangerous
for Trump.
It basically is. But I want to go back to something that you said, Darlene, and that is, those who won't stay home for Donald Trump. As far as we're talking about the delegates, and the Bernie supporters are really echoing that Hillary is not that far ahead because of the way the delegates are split. And Patty, you're great about talking about this as far as states that it's not winner take all so far. So can you talk a little bit about that and why Hillary is not as far as ahead, or is she, as they're making it out to be?
It's the math of it. We know that each state and each party, the parties are different. The Democrats have to reach a completely different number to win the nomination than the Republicans, and the way they structure that. But each state and each party has a set number of delegates to represent them at the national convention. And I believe this year the Republicans will be meeting in Cleveland, Ohio, and the Democrats will be meeting in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. But sometimes they're apportioned, sometimes they're winner take all.
Right.
As Darlene just mentioned, we're going to be heading into this winner take all kind of look, the way the primary season is structured. But some of these races between, particularly, for example, Hillary and Bernie, they've been really close. And so if you've got, say, 60 delegates for your state, and one gets 31 and one gets 28, or 29, and one gets 32 and one gets 28. I mean, it's close enough that you're just a little bit ahead. You're not.
Exactly,
ahead.
like Missouri, they couldn't even call that state till the next day, and Hillary won, but because it was proportional, they virtually took home the same amount of delegates.
Yeah, I think she got 1 or 2 extra.
Yeah, exactly. So
here's where Bernie's in trouble. I mean, it's not mathematically impossible because it's proportional. And Patty's right. With the exception of a few states, whoever's won has only gained 1 or 2 extra delegates.
Right.
And we have some big states. We got California here. We have New York, Pennsylvania, and but because Hillary was able to rack up these big totals in the South with the coalition that Bernie doesn't have, he racked up in Vermont, but that's a very small state with some delegates.
State.
All the states Bernie's has won, he's only picked up an extra couple delegates. I think Iowa, what did he get, 2 or 3 or something?
And he did win in Michigan. That's a big state.
In Michigan. But even that Michigan, he won close. Was it 52%, I think?
51-49, basically.
51-40, yeah. So I saw something doing the math. He would have to win 60% of the remaining states. And he has, other than Vermont, he hasn't won anything by 60%. That's where so is it, it's kind of like, are the Rangers out of it yet? No, but let's be real. So mathematically, he's not out of it, and he's looking for that. And
so
he'd have to average 60%.
Yes.
Across all of the every single one of the remaining races.
To catch her.
Yeah.
So who has the bigger challenge? Bernie Sanders defeating Hillary Clinton and getting the eventual nomination for the Democrats, or any of the Republicans defeating Donald Trump and getting the GOP nomination?
Oh, I think the Republicans have a bigger deal.
I think they have a bigger challenge also.
agree,
Yeah, because I'm not sure Trump can get to 1237. He may get to 1100.
See, and that's what's going to be so interesting.
That's going to be so. Hey, let's talk about that. We got to take a break.
Okay.
As soon as we come back, we're going to pick right back up on that. Hang around for more Lambda Weekly.
I'm Michael from UNT, and I listen to Lambda Weekly on Knon 89.3 FM.
And welcome back to Lambda Weekly. I'm Lerone Landis here with Patti Fink. And joining us today is family law attorney Darlene Ewing, just helping us talk about the ins and outs of the political race. This is political season specifically. Of course, there's local races going on also, but we're specifically talking about the presidential race. And just before the break, we were talking about who had the bigger challenge to capture the nomination, because right now it's looking like it will be Donald Trump on the GOP side, and it looks like it will be Hillary Clinton on the Dem side. But there are possible ways for that not to happen. And one of them for the Republicans, Trump needs to hit the magic number of 1,237 delegates. And if he doesn't, there's already this effort by many other Republicans to not I guess vote for someone else. So, and that leads us to, then it would be this much talked about, a brokered convention. What is a brokered convention? Patti, you're great about this. What give us a delegates 101.
I'm going to look at Darlene on the
GOP side?
No, on the Democratic side. She's an expert on all this stuff.
Okay.
But a broker convention basically means you come to the convention. Typically, the first vote, you're pledged, you're committed, and bound by who sent you. For example, in our Senate district convention yesterday, we could have 3 Hillary delegates and 1 Bernie delegate because she won Texas by 75% of the popular vote.
Gotcha.
So, I mean, that's proportional going to the thing. And they are bound. Whoever fills those slots must vote for, if they're a Hillary delegate, vote for Hillary on the first ballot. And if they're a Bernie, they must vote for Bernie. That's what they're being sent to the convention for. I mean, they're representing those voters that voted each way. So, on that first ballot, they're committed. But then if it has to go to a second ballot, they're typically released, and they can vote any way they want. And so, for cycles when you have a broker convention, you really want who you select is more important sometimes than who they're voting for, because you want somebody who is going to do the right thing, do the smart thing, do the thing that's going to win in November. I mean, if it comes to a second ballot, come on, how many years now has it been? How many cycles has it been since we've had a broker convention in the Democratic?
Probably was 68 brokered.
80 was a troublesome.
80 was troublesome
with Kennedy and Carter.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
It's been a very long time on our side.
So if it goes to a second ballot, is that when the unpledged delegates come into play, or super delegates?
I think they would absolutely come into play in both ballots.
Okay.
But if you couldn't win on the first ballot with super delegate votes, then everybody's freed up on the second ballot, so it's open season.
Okay, I get what you're saying now. Okay.
See, Republicans, their rules are a little more complicated. I heard the national chair explain their rules.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of how long you have to hang in there, pledge to your delegate, varies by state to state. Most states say after the first one you can leave, which is what our rules are. Then some of their states say, no, you have to hang in there for 2 rounds. You're not released till the 3rd round.
Oh.
So then it depends on which state releases which delegates. And here's the other thing, like Marco Rubio has 180 something or whatever. Mm-hmm. He cannot tell his delegates, okay, I want y'all to all throw in for Ted Cruz. They're beholding under their state rules. He doesn't control his own delegates. It's
really?
Yes.
In the Republican Party.
In the Republican
so
Party.
Are they freed up?
Depends on their state rules. If their state rule says they're freed up after the first, yes, and they can go for anybody, Trump, Kasich, whoever they want it. If their state rules say you have to stay firm for 2 rounds, they can't split off until the 3rd round. So Marco Rubio can't walk into the convention before the voting starts and says, I release all my delegates and direct you to vote for Ted Cruz. He can't do that under the rules. The other thing I heard this morning from, I forget, what's the Republican at it? Reese something weird.
I just call him rinse.
Rinse. Okay, rinse.
Okay.
Like wash, rinse, repeat.
Right.
He was explaining to a reporter this morning that they can change the rules for every convention.
And the Republican side.
The Republican side, not Democrats. Our rules are set. We know what the rules are going in. But each convention, the delegates that go to the 16 convention in Cleveland can get together before they do the presidential vote and change the rules.
That's insane.
Yeah,
insane.
So even the candidates don't know for sure what the rules are going to be. So if Trump doesn't get there, it's going to be pure entertainment.
It already is.
Well, that's true.
But
according to him, there'll be riots in the street.
Right, and there already are.
There already are.
But okay, so let's say Trump does not get to exactly the 1237, but somewhere shy of 100 or so delegates. He still has well above, what the rest of his candidates.
Math is math.
But
rules are rules.
So if he doesn't, but that what? I can't believe I'm defending Trump. But so that would kind of be just, I don't know, would that kind of just be morally wrong if they did give it to somebody else?
Republicans on the talk show circuit, no, because the rules are the rules, and if you can't get 1237. Too bad you didn't follow the rules, and they're now free to do whatever they want. Now, if they deny it to him, he's within 100.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Okay, 35% of their electorate are going to stay home, and these are violent people. Not all of them, but a fringe minority of them are. Mm-hmm. I think the Republicans will. I heard someone say today, we can deny it. If that happens, then we deny the nomination to Trump. We should do it to save the party, even though it'll cost us the White House.
Interesting.
Because if we make Trump the nominee, our party is destroyed. That's
interesting.
It's so interesting to me that they're faced with this predicament because, we were talking about this earlier. They created this.
They did.
Yes. They created this, and I'll tell you what. In my partner Erin, as you guys know, and she used to be on this show, is very opinionated.
I know,
and I love that about her. But she puts all of the blame on the real putting it out there where it's okay to talk this way on Sarah Palin. And until Sarah Palin, she was talking about, Barack Obama was palling around with terrorists.
Yeah.
Nobody would have said that in the previous cycle or any cycle prior to that. And so she sort of made it okay. And the press didn't really criticize her. They would show her speaking on TV and stuff, but it wasn't, it's like, and then it just crept further and further. And we remember those people going to those rallies with her and being incredibly racist, incredibly xenophobic, incredibly everything, mostly directed at Barack Obama. And now they're directing it at whoever they need. But like they used the LGBT community in 2004.
Yeah.
Used us.
Totally used us.
And back then we were saying, okay, they're going to come for immigrants next. And ta-da.
They are.
They need somebody to blame.
Right.
So they got to blame. You're absolutely right. They have to blame someone. And they claim free speech means I can say anything I want. Free speech in this country has never been an unregulated right to be, hate speech, to be bigoted, to attack people, to encourage people to punch the guy out, and that's not free speach.
No.
That's not. But they think being politically correct means I don't have to be civil and I don't have to, be racist, non-bigoted. I mean, in Arizona yesterday where they had all those riots, there was a man who stood up. All he had was a sign that said, I'm against hate speech. They threw him out. It turns out he was a Muslim, a war vet. They started screaming at him, get out of our country. Why don't you get a job? The guy works for a nonprofit that provides service dogs to disabled vets. And he has a history in the military, Department of Justice. I mean, he's got this great resume, a great American, but that's what we've come to.
It is.
It's just crazy. And the other thing that really just chaps me, and coming from a history of LGBT activism and democratic activism, it just really does chap me, is when they say, well, I love him because he's not politically correct. Well, as if political correctness is this big monster. And political correctness is just about basic empathy and respect for others. And when we say we're being politically correct, it's because I don't talk about disabled people and make fun of them like Trump did. That's not politically correct, no. But it's also, guess what? Not respectful of someone who's disabled and saying, I understand where you come from. And if we say, that we're not, we talk about people with different abilities, not because they're disabled or handicapped. We talk about them with different abilities. They happen to maybe not be able to use their legs, but they've got lots of other abilities they can use. You know what I mean? And so it's about understanding and respecting people.
It is.
And for them to say, oh, well, we want to throw that out the window. Well, you're throwing out respect for other people. It's not about what words you use. It's about your intent.
And Darlene, you brought up something that I definitely wanted to talk about. That is this notion of freedom of speech and what that means and what it doesn't mean. And in specific terms in relation to the LGBT community, our issues really haven't been talked about. It's been largely absent from the political debate on the presidential level this season. It's not to say it hasn't been brought up at all, but largely it has not. And I can only gather it's because now that marriage equality is legal in all 50 states, they don't have anything else to go after. That's what you would think. There are several different states that have passed measures. They haven't been signed into law yet, but have passed measures called religious freedom, religious protection bills. And one of them is in Georgia. And this is a biggie because, well, first of all, I'll tell you what the bill does. It's called HB 757. It protects faith-based organizations, churches, religious schools, or associations that don't have to rent facilities, objectionable events like marriages between gay people, nor that has to provide services, educational, charitable, social, or otherwise to same-sex couples. That is horrendous. Now, the NFL has stepped in because the city of Atlanta is will start new construction on a new football stadium next year. And in hopes to, usually with the NFL, usually how it works now, in order to get the Super Bowl, you have to have a top-notch stadium. And if you don't have one, they're going to start, as a deal to build one, they'll agree to give you the Super Bowl. So they're working on trying to get the Super Bowl probably by the 2018-2019 season. And the NFL has already pumped the brakes on that and said, hey, if this passes, and it has passed the Senate, it hasn't been signed into law yet, but the NFL has already stepped in and said, if this goes into law, we're going to have to reevaluate that. That's like over $1 billion of loss. So good for the NFL.
Good for them.
Good for them. But
there's in Indiana.
There's one in Indiana, Arizona. They're back in it too.
Because now we're talking money.
Now we're talking money.
Where's our principle?
Exactly. But I wonder why hasn't this been really? It's not really been part of the dialogue.
Really the social issues. I mean, Cruz tried it because he kept saying how, he was encouraging states to ignore the Constitution, and he's going to get in there and he's going to change the Constitution. Or ignore the Supreme Court, and he's going to get all these laws and all these, religion allows discrimination laws that they're passing. But I don't, I think Trump kind of swamped that whole normal social issue thing. Now it's not about, same-sex marriage. It's not, you don't hear much about, choice. Mm-hmm. It's all about, your jobs and trade and terrorism, and everybody who's a Muslim is carrying a gun and is going to shoot you, and, Mexicans are stealing our jobs and we got to ship them all back, deport. I think people, Barack Obama has reduced unemployment. Mm-hmm. He has brought us out of the recession. He saved the economy. But the reality is companies are not paying their workers living wages. They really are not doing it. And so people, your average middle class, because they've been union busting, and unions provided so many good paying jobs, it's all about me. So the billionaires and the CEOs are making more money, which is why Bernie's message rings so well. They're all
the income inequality is
a biggie, and I think it's overtaken the social. I mean, look at these evangelicals on the Republican side. They're supporting Donald Trump. This is a womanizing blankety blank who's on his third marriage and marries trophy wives and
his trophy wife is an immigrant.
Two of them have been.
Two of them
were immigrants, but they were legal, of course.
Yes.
I mean, he doesn't hire citizens at his resort. He brings in workers from Romania on these special visas that are basically nothing but indentured servants because they can't go to work for anybody else, so he can treat them however he wants. And so he manipulates the system. He used undocumented workers to build his hotels. Mm-hmm. And this is the champion for evangelicals. It boggles my mind that they are throwing all their so-called principles out the window for this idiot. I don't get it.
Well, make no mistake, even though that, again, our issues haven't been a main talking point this election season, Trump included, they're very much against marriage equality.
These religion bills are nothing but a legalized discrimination. And, it's not just I can discriminate against the LGBT community. They can discriminate against, Mexicans. They can discriminate against African Americans. They can discriminate against biracial couples because that's against my religion.
Right.
And, and they talk about in their schools or here's part of the fallacy. And Republicans always trumpet out lies to just like we have to repress the vote because of voter fraud, and there's no voter fraud. Abbott still says there's rampant voter fraud. Well, Abbott's just a liar. Mm-hmm. But the same thing, that, we have to protect our churches and our ministers so they're not forced to do same-sex, weddings. They're not forced to now.
They're not forced to, exactly.
A pastor can do anyone. I mean,
exactly.
Now if you're the JP, the law says you marry everybody or nobody.
Right.
You don't pick and choose. But if I'm a pastor at a church, I don't have to marry anybody. I don't have to marry divorced couples.
Exactly.
There's Catholic priests who will not marry divorced people.
That's true.
There are Jewish rabbis who won't marry someone if both of them are not Jewish.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean,
and no one's challenging that.
Nobody's challenging that.
Yeah. So these are made up issues.
They are.
They really are.
It's the same kind of lies they've been shoveling for years that people have turned around and believe because Sean Hannity says so.
And I had to laugh, but it's not laughable because people don't know better. They don't even think to and try and check. But one of the things that Trump has said is that if he does, when he becomes president, he will change the law regarding same-sex marriage. I'm sorry, you can't do that.
To change the Constitution. And these people say they love the Constitution, but they want to change A, B, C, D, E, F. I mean, they want to change so much of it.
But here's what
they don't want government control either, unless it comes to your health care, your body, or who you love or who you marry. Right. I mean, then they want to be all up in your business.
Well, I just want to know. I'm like, okay, how do you think Trump is going to do that? if Trump could have changed, if he can reverse that law, then that means Barack Obama could have input it, and he couldn't.
Well, it's the same way that he's going to have Mexico pay for this billion-dollar wall.
Exactly.
Really?
Like, yeah, really?
I mean, the Mexican president said, no, we ain't doing that.
Yeah.
He didn't say just no. He
No.
he wrapped it in some words we can't say on the air.
Right.
And if anybody asked him how he's going to do it, I did hear him at one point say, well, then the government will do it. I mean, the man has no solutions or
None.
plans on how he's going to
Zero.
make America great again.
Exactly.
He's just going to do it because I'm Donald Trump, and you
Right.
can, trust me to do it.
I think it's more like make America hate again or make America white again.
Yeah.
Very
You
much
know.
so. Well, let's talk a little bit about Hillary Clinton and gay issues. She kind of made a big gaffe here recently, and I think she was trying to honor the real late person, the late Nancy Reagan, and she praised her for her, I guess, bringing the attention to AIDS and HIV back in the 80s.
Yeah.
Just starting the conversation, and immediately she got some backlash on that, and she did come out and apologize. She clarified what she should have said, but I just kind of thought, what was she thinking in the first place?
I don't know what she was thinking, but I think it's gone more than that. And a lot of people don't realize this happened on a Friday.
Okay.
She made that statement, and of course, the LGBT community across the country went, and she caught on really quickly, and she sent out a tweet,
Right,
apologizing for it. But then the next day, she released a policy position on
She did.
on HIV/AIDS that was so incredibly detailed and comprehensive.
It was.
And I'm like, wow. And no presidential candidate has done that in the past. I mean, this is a very good policy. And then on Monday, the following Monday, Bernie Sanders came out with a policy position detailed on HIV/AIDS. And so I guess Nancy Reagan really did start the conversation.
Well,
Maybe in a negative way.
Yeah, in a negative way. And I think that's
because we have something we didn't have before.
Right,
We've got two presidential candidates with explicit and really good HIV/AIDS policies.
For those who weren't around, at the height of HIV and AIDS in the 80s, that was just a really bad time, and it was so it's a really sensitive issue for our community because not only did they not start the conversation on it, I guess like you said, maybe in a negative way they did. President Reagan specifically wouldn't even say the word for the longest time.
Right.
Why millions of people were getting sick. So dying. And so that's why it was such a big issue. There were other things she could have praised Nancy Reagan for, and she did. But I just wondered, what was she thinking at that very moment?
She put her foot in her mouth, but
she did.
Let me say this. As county chair for 10 years, I did a lot of press, newspaper, and sometimes you were prepared, sometimes you weren't. And I had people doing press releases for me. People would write things for me.
Oh, absolutely.
So I don't know if she just was talking off the cuff or somebody wrote her, but I put my foot in my mouth on more than one occasion.
I've done it too in the LGBT press.
Yeah, we're kind of in a gotcha moment because of all the internet and everything else. That a candidate says any little thing. So I think you got to look at their track record. And if you look at Hillary's track record, I don't think the LGBT community has anything to worry about. And you're right. I remember the 80s. I'm old enough, and I had some clients who died of AIDS, and that was my exposure to it as a straight person. I just had never seen such a devastating disease and how it destroyed people and destroyed lives. And even that's where I became kind of aware of some of the issues because you would have dying people in the hospital and their partners banned by family.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is outrageous. But you remember the story where the Reagans wouldn't help Rock Hudson?
Yes,
Yeah.
I do
Just to
remember
make
that.
a phone call to get him into
Right.
a hospital in Paris.
Right.
Because they didn't want the I guess the press to find out they might have helped, a gay
Right.
man.
Right.
I mean, so you got to look at the 80s. So yeah, she shouldn't have said what she said. But I think if you look at the track record, then I think you realize it was just a gaffe and not really. She was trying to praise Nancy.
She was trying to praise Nancy, and here's where she scored points
I don't
for
know
me.
why, but she was.
She's trying to be nice.
Trying to be nice at
yeah,
an
right.
appropriate time.
But here's where she scored points for me, and that is, for me, it's true leadership when you can recognize your mistake and immediately
Yes.
say, I made a mistake, I apologize. She didn't try and put it off on anybody else.
Yep.
I made a mistake. Let's move on. That's
She didn't
leadership
try to
to me.
justify it.
She didn't
Well,
try and
but,
justify it. Exactly. I
Hey,
made a
I was
mistake.
wrong.
She clarified, so good for her. We need to take a break. We'll be right back with more Lambda Weekly.
Hi, this is Patti Fink, and you're listening to Lambda Weekly on 89.3 KNON FM.
And welcome back to Lambda Weekly. Just in case you just joined us, we're talking with Darlene Ewing today, just helping us talking about some of the ins and outs of the current political race. One of the biggest issues right now is the replacement of a new Supreme Court nominee. And Barack Obama has named someone, and that is Justice Merrick Garland. And, of course, the GOPs most of them, some of them have already broken rank and said that they are not going to give this man a hearing, even though they have 10 months to do so. Plenty of time. So, anyway, just some initial thoughts about the pick.
I kind of think he's cool. I think he's...
What do we know about him?
He's not super liberal, but he's not Scalia.
I
mean, we're talking about replacing Scalia.
We're talking about replacing Scalia, who passed away last month.
In Marfa.
Yeah.
Yes,
right.
At a ranch.
At a ranch.
On a free trip given to him by someone who had a case before his court.
Yes.
But anyway,
What was this?
we digress.
We digress. Well, let's digress again. What was his official cause of death? I did say natural causes.
I think it was natural causes, but I heard somebody say, this is a guy who was overweight, who smoked and drank. I mean, please.
And he was 79?
79.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
But yeah,
his time may come.
Anything is an improvement over Scalia. I mean, my initial reaction was, that's not who I was hoping for.
Right.
But I've been reading up on the guy, and first of all, everybody never questions his character. He's ethical. He has a great reputation.
With Democrats and Republicans.
Democrats and Republicans. He was confirmed for the D.C. court overwhelmingly, no problem.
Yeah, I mean, unanimously.
He's buddies with Orrin Hatch, a Republican on the judiciary. In a normal year, he would be confirmed within weeks.
Oh, absolutely.
But so I started looking at it. He's where I want him to be on choice. He's okay on LGBT issues. He is for gun control. So he's not an NRA wingnut.
He was the prosecutor in the Oklahoma City bombing.
He was.
Yes. So he has a real feel for violence and gun violence and things of that nature.
And everything I've heard is he is overwhelmingly probably the best ever qualified person to be put on the bench. And he's been on a short list several times.
Right. And he he left a lucrative private practice to become a public servant, become the prosecutor, and then work his way through the courts. He believes in public service, so he believes it's an honor to do public service. This man could be making $500,000, $1 million a year, because he was Harvard Law Review? I mean, he was top notch. So the guy's clearly qualified. Is he going to get confirmed? Probably not.
That's go ahead. That's awful.
Saying, and Orrin Hatch is quoted as saying after Scalia passed, and they're talking about the nomination.
Yes.
As saying, President Obama would do well if he were to pick someone like Merrick Garland, but he's not going to do that. That'll never happen.
Yeah. Well,
and Barack Obama called his bluff.
Yeah.
Totally.
And so what I think is really insane and indicative of the GOP mentality is that Mitch McConnell, who is the majority leader in the Senate and has control over much of this process, has said after Scalia passed away and before any discussion of a nominee, he said they would not even give whoever it is a hearing, much less a vote.
Which has never been done, giving a hearing.
It's unprecedented. There are even cases in the past and in modern history too, where a nominee was made in the last year of a presidency.
Justice Breyer.
Yeah, and continue through, got a hearing and a vote, and so why they think Barack Obama is only a 3-year term under the Constitution of the United States, I don't know, but it's offensive to me, and I think in many ways racist for
absolutely.
Mitch McConnell to say that President Obama does not get a 4th year. As president of the United States, and it's not going to respect the Constitution. But for the ones falling behind him, I think there's going to be mud on their face, big time.
And McConnell said today that he wouldn't even have a hearing in a lame duck session. In other words, he was asked, what if Hillary Clinton wins? And then you're afraid she's going to have someone more liberal than Judge Garland. Then they were like, we're not giving him a hearing. We're not confirming anyone. We're not doing it, even in a lame duck session.
Wow.
Because I've heard that perhaps remember, between the election and Inauguration Day is about 2 months.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been speculation that if Hillary did win the White House on November 8th, and then that time, they had time in there to do that, to go ahead and confirm Merrick Garland so that Hillary wouldn't name somebody to that seat. But it sounds to me like he's
that's what he said.
doubled
Now,
down.
I think he has doubled down, but I think he'll backtrack because they're still taking the position they're going to win the White House so they can put another Scalia in, which is what Cruz has said. He would nominate someone just like Scalia. Who knows what Trump would do because nobody knows what he thinks.
Right.
But he doesn't know what he thinks.
He doesn't know what he thinks.
Somebody has to tell him what
I mean,
to think.
his own foreign policy advisor is his own brain.
It's him.
But in a fantasy world, they don't confirm the justice, and Hillary wins the White House. We take back the Senate, and she can appoint someone as far left as we can get. Now that would be.
I mean, they just
can't.
they can't put this off forever.
No.
I mean, and there's nothing in the Constitution or legally binding them to hold hearings in a certain amount of time.
No, there's no time
Unfortunately
limit.
not.
Advising consent, they can take all the time they want. The longest was a couple hundred days, and it was way back in 1800s. I mean,
Yeah, a very long time. And then
A long
Bork
time.
was a long time.
yeah, Bork.
And ultimately,
He was thrown out. But it's a long time. So this is just unprecedented what they're doing, and they have confirmed people in an election year.
Of course.
Of course, even a better fantasy was that Hillary win, we get the Senate, and she nominate Barack Obama, and then they have to watch him at the Supreme
Yes.
Court every single
I have seen
day.
a lot of that.
that would be the ultimate.
That would be
That would be
ultimate.
wonderful.
That would be wonderful. It's unprecedented. It's awful. You're messing with the justice system. There are some very important cases that are already
Yes.
waiting to be ruled on at this very second.
Some right here from Texas.
Some right here from Texas. You mentioned one earlier.
From Texas?
Yes. That you want to,
I know there's a voting rights case coming out of Texas.
The
There's
voting
one-
rights, and then there's the clinics, the new restrictions
Yes,
on abortion.
on abortion.
clinics. Now, here's what's scary about having 8 justices. It works in some ways. For example, if the Supreme Court ties 4-4, then the next level, the appellate court's ruling stands.
right.
That would devastate abortion clinics in Texas because the Fifth Circuit has already said these restrictive laws that's going to shut down all but maybe 10 clinics in the state, that's constitutional.
Right.
Okay, so that would stand, and it would take another case to wind its way up after they,
Right.
confirm
In other
someone.
words, years.
But you've got some cases in some more liberal circuits that they would also stand, which would be positive, and one of them is a voting rights case, I think, out of North Carolina, that is similar to the Texas voting rights case, where Texas, the district court found that the map was discriminatory. The Court of Appeals, they said, well, it's not, which is typical for our Court of Appeals because they're basically right to the Attila the Hun. And so then that would stand. But there's a good voting rights case, I think it's North Carolina, where they said this kind of a map is discriminatory. So then there would be a conflict, so eventually it may get back next year. But that's the consequence of only having 8 justices.
Absolutely. And if you think that the possibility of it being a 4-4 split is far off, that's not true.
No.
Some of the biggest decisions that have come down in the past couple of years have been 5-4,
Mm-hmm.
including ours, which was
That's right.
the marriage equality case.
Obergefell.
Obergefell, that was a 5-4 split. So we that's why it is built the way it is. We need another justice on the bench.
And the Constitution doesn't even say 9. It doesn't have to be 9 justices. It just needs to be an odd number.
Just be an odd
so
number.
that when we have splits of opinion, somebody's deciding.
Yeah.
Right.
We can't just leave it hanging there because we could say, just be 4-4 kind of world. And
what's scary about the abortion case, they've heard our oral arguments on it, and the so-called swing vote, Justice Kennedy, he was talking like maybe it should be sent back to the state for further evidence gathering to determine whether there really has been discrimination. Does it discriminate against poor minorities in El Paso that would have to drive 3 and 4 hours to the nearest clinic if this law took effect. So he may punt, which means we're stuck with the law.
Mm-hmm. You know, I was listening to that, the oral argument in that case on C-SPAN, and it's just, it's interesting to me, but then I have to remember that people say, you know, a lot of questions that they ask, they're really trying to convince each other. They do the questioning so that, you know, this justice on this end can try to influence somebody on the other end. And so it may not be a question that they're genuinely asking for the knowledge of it. Oftentimes
that's a good point.
Right.
But they could be kind of throwing it to somebody else.
Right. There's kind of this little rule in trial court. If the judge keeps, you know, when the other side objects and the judge keeps sustaining their objection, you're probably in good shape because they're protecting the record because they're kind of maybe go your way, and so they're letting the other side have all the objections they think they need.
Right.
Gotcha.
So it's the same kind of concept. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And there was a mention in the Supreme Court. There was a big case that, again, the media didn't really talk about, and we didn't even talk about, and it was one of our issues, had to do with adoption with same-sex couples. Talk a little bit about that, Patti?
It was like EL versus VL. It's an adoption case where two women had one of them bore the children, was the birth mother. The other woman adopted the children. Time passed, years passed. Both of them were raising their children, and then they split. And they got the adoption recognized in Georgia, and then went to Alabama.
They moved.
They moved, and they went to Alabama, and they split up in Alabama. And Alabama, you know, they went all the way to the Supreme Court in Alabama, and you know, we come back to Roy Moore, who has been, you know, like a topic of discussion from the marriage case because he told the entire state to not marry anybody.
Right.
And he's the guy who did the Ten Commandments monument and all that kind of stuff. And so they had that case was before them, and then it went to the Supreme Court to say they must honor the adoption in Georgia. And the great thing was that the Supreme Court, in a very kind of terse little way, 8-0,
8-0,
said you have to honor Georgia's adoption.
That means,
and you were talking about that. We were talking about that yesterday, actually.
Yeah, because what's amazing about it is, you know, Alabama says we don't allow gay adoption here, so we're not going to recognize. They said, oh yeah, there's this thing in the Constitution called full faith and credit. Once again, we want to pick and choose which of the Constitution.
Exactly.
But it's full faith and credit. So one state has to give full faith and credit to another state's laws. 8-0, they said that. Now let's come back to Texas years ago when Judge Tina Callahan granted a divorce before the Oberfeld case and before gay marriage and all that. She granted a divorce because the two guys were married in Massachusetts, which had legal same-sex marriage. They moved to Texas. They wanted a divorce. They couldn't get it in Massachusetts because they didn't live there anymore. And she granted them divorce under the theory of full faith and credit.
Right.
No. Abbott, he was Attorney General. He got involved. They took it to the Supreme Court, and the Texas Supreme Court said, nope. There's no gay, same-sex marriage in Texas, so there can't be any same-sex divorce.
Yeah, their argument was by granting the divorce, they're recognizing the marriage.
Their argument was la 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 la.
Which, of course, is what the Constitution says she should have done, and now the Supreme Court has validated what she did those years ago.
Yes, absolutely.
But I just want to repeat that. We got an 8-0 victory. That means that Clarence Thomas actually voted on our side. I'm still in shock.
Hey, knock, knock. We have ruled on this issue and all of the side issues, adoption, custody, all that stuff. We're not going to do that again. Pay attention.
Right.
Same-sex marriage is legal, and they have the same rights to their children as anybody else.
Let's move on.
Yeah. And they're not going to keep rehearing this stuff.
Right.
Remember, we talked for a long time about what happened in Oklahoma. And they would not recognize adoptions from other states involving same-sex couples. And so, like, if you were to drive from, Texas to Iowa and went through Oklahoma, while you're in Oklahoma, you are not the parent of your child.
Right.
And your child has no parents, perhaps.
Right.
And then when you cross into the other states, then you're fine. And that got slapped down.
Yes.
Just within Oklahoma. Yeah. So, because it's so egregiously unfair.
It is. It is.
I mean, you have a court saying this is my child.
That's your child.
That's your child.
Well, we're out of time.
Yeah.
Wow.
So hopefully
Fast.
you learned a little something new about the candidates. But listen to the show today. Thank you very much, Darlene, for coming on.
thanks
Please
for
come
having me.
back.
That was
You
great
come
fun.
back.
I'll come
Yeah.
back anytime.
All right. Thank you, and we'll see you all again next week. Have a happy spring.
KNON 89.3 FM in Dallas and Fort Worth, the voice of the people.
Business owners, tell KNON's listeners about your business. You can put your business or event on KNON. KNON currently has space available to run announcements for you. Tell KNON's listeners about your goods, services, nightclub, concert, or event. Help keep the voice of the people on the air while putting your information on the air. KNON's been named the #1 radio station in Dallas by both the Dallas Observer and D Magazine. Put your business with Dallas's #1 station. Call now for more information at 214-828-9500, extension 227, or extension 233. For more information, go to knon.org and click on the Run Spots on KNON page. It's a great way for your business to support community radio while letting more people know about you.